Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today we'll do a little bit of poly painting in ZBrush. Let me just get rid of this really quick. The last one I did was okay. I mean, it was all right at kind of establishing colors and stuff, but it was kind of paintbrushy and well, more kind of airbrushy actually, and it didn't have a lot of detail in it, but it did kind of establish a color value, which is okay. I wanted to do hopefully something a little more realistic looking, and so I have no idea what I'm going to do with this guy, but we'll see how it goes. I just want to kind of go over some of the brush options really quick. You can kind of use everything pretty generically and get really airbrushy looks, which I think probably turns a lot of people off, and they think, well, I can't really get realistic looking stuff, and that's kind of true. But if you kind of change your brushes to get different looks and feels like this, you can kind of get much more realistic skin patterns and tones and color blending and stuff like that. So I would encourage everyone to kind of play around with colors and the way brushes work. And usually what people see is they do this and they go, oh, well, that's not very realistic. And I agree, this is not very realistic. It's too solid. It doesn't look like skin or anything like that. And it's just too aggressive. But if you play with your stroke a little bit, and for example, if we go in here to our stroke and we change that to spray, we'll immediately get a much different look. But even this, it's kind of like, okay, well, what is this exactly? It's not it's not a very useful kind of setting right off the bat. It's just kind of this blobby, what the heck is going on kind of a thing. To fix that, if you go under stroke, you have a couple of different options. You have scale, color, and flow. These are the three you're going to mess with the most. Scale is, how big of a dot size are you going to get. Color is the color variation, and that's, if you crank it all the way up, you'll get a much more aggressive color variation. And if you change your flow, for example, to 1, it's going to be a very solid brick. And if you change it to 0.04, it's not nearly as aggressive. It's much more loose. Even if I press hard, you know what I mean? So you get a couple of different options there, but then I like to kind of double up on some of these things. Even this, if you want kind of an uneven skin tone, you can do this, and that's perfectly fine. It kind of gives you a generic skin tone, which is good, or at least some kind of color variation, which I don't mind. Not too shabby. And you can go large scale and do this kind of thing. But I do like to double up on some of this stuff a little bit. So yes, I'll have spray, but then maybe I'll also add an alpha to my spray. And if I do that, we get a much more refined kind of, skin texture or porous kind of brush, and we can go really big with that, and then we can go real loose and small, and even when you zoom in like to the eye level and stuff, you can get really tiny with it here. And this I kind of feel like works pretty good. I mean, if you're trying to build color up, this for me is probably more the way to go than laying down these heavy sheets of color. Because this is so nice where it's like, I can lay down a subdermal layer of red or purples or something like that, and then kind of go over it with a, what is the top skin layer going to be? Like maybe the blood and everything underneath is going to be reds and purples, but the skin on top is going to be sort of greens. Then you can kind of sort of get some nice blending and stuff, where you get reds peeking through, kind of incidentally. And then you kind of just keep going back and forth, where you do reds, and greens, and you kind of, everyone paints a little bit differently, but for me it's all kind of like building up colors and stuff. And yes, because maybe I did go over with green, it doesn't mean I'm not going to go back with reds again and kind of hit certain areas. It's always a combination of building up for me anyway. So I don't really want these colors, I don't think. Although the green isn't too bad, actually, now that I'm kind of looking at it. I'm going to do a quick color fill. I'm going to go to white. I'm going to say color, fill object. There we go. The other thing too is don't forget you can always adjust your RGB intensity. So even though I'm getting this, and that's a nice result maybe for like a stippled brush, you know, you can change it down to a 20% kind of a thing and get a much less aggressive brush stroke, which is good. So I have no idea what I'm gonna do with this. I kind of always hate starting videos not having any idea what I'm doing, but I never know what I'm doing. I always just start with either a blob of clay or a finished sculpt, and then I just kind of figure stuff out. The downside of that, unfortunately for you guys, is it's not necessarily going to be a really straightforward video, because I'll just kind of do whatever. You know, if I decide I like them green, I'll make them green. If I like them yellow, I'll make them yellow. One thing I'll do is I'll open my color tab and I'll pop this off to the right, and then usually the first thing I kind of start doing is playing around with what is his base coat, like what color is he? Because to me right off the bat that's the most important thing. Like, is this guy purple? Is he orange? Does he look like a Smurf, an avatar? What is he? The color I'm kind of thinking in my head right now, let me go adjust my stroke again really quick to be a little more heavy so I can cover more ground. The color I'm kind of thinking in my head at least is kind of a white, thin-skinned. I like thin skin because I like being able to show subdermal stuff. I think it just adds interest to characters. It doesn't have to be everywhere and all the time, but you know, behind ears, and especially this guy because he's not necessarily a bat, but he kind of has these big bat ears and this membrane thing going on, which to me just implies thin skin, because once I start thinking about bats, I just assume thin skin. I'm going to go with bigger coverage in the back. And he's got a bit of green in him right now, but I kind of want to pull him over to yellow maybe. Especially in the beginning, for me, man, I do a lot of color changing in the beginning. And I'm very not committed to what I'm doing. Just like when I sculpt, I mean, anyone who's watching my sculpting videos or, you know, DVDs or anything, it's like, I think it's important not to commit, you know. There's a lot of people in the world, too, that, you know, artists that have, this is kind of a side topic, but a lot of artists that have base heads that they always start their sculpts with. I don't even do that. I feel like if you start with the same base head all the time, you always create kind of the same thing because you're starting with the same base head always. And that just lends itself to steering you in a direction, and I always find I come up with a much more creative result if I don't do that. If I give myself literally a blank canvas to paint on or to sculpt on, I will always get something more interesting than if I predefine a human head and then try and push it around. I mean, I'll just start with a brick of clay and kind of go from there. So this color isn't bad. It's okay. Oops. Actually, my Z intensity doesn't matter. Oh, by the way, if you don't know, please, you know, you should obviously turn off your Z add and Z subtract. You should only have RGB on. You should have nothing else. And the shader that I'm using is Skin Shade 4. It's kind of the standard one that I paint on if I'm doing a poly paint job. Sometimes I'll change it up midway through just to kind of get different looks, but you can't count on that. If this is something that needs to go back into Maya or Max or XSI or something after the fact, you definitely can't rely on that shader, because you'll have to rebuild that type of shader in the mental ray or something else, which is certainly doable. So this is okay. I've got kind of a, you know, speckled color going on. Let's do a little more pinks and stuff. And I'm going to be pretty loose. Again, I'm not sold on anything I'm doing. I'm really generic. I'm going to do a really light pink at first to kind of see if I can define areas that I think will look interesting in that color. And for me, those areas tend to be areas where there's heavier blood flow or maybe tension in the skin. You know, if someone's frowning, you know, and making a kind of a grimacing face, blood flows to the surface of the skin, of course, and causes blushing of the cheeks and things like that. So I try to bring reds into those areas. You know, his mouth, for example, has a lot of tension in it, and I feel like that would be blushing quite a bit. And then, of course, his lips. And this is a very subtle pink initially because I don't want to commit to it. It's just going to be a bit of an outline for me. Under and around the eyes. Just a bit along the cheeks. This is probably a little bit too light, actually, even for me. The neck, let's do that. Okay, so there we go. Got a little bit of reds in there. Let's shift towards purple just for now. I want to maybe start getting a little more, just a bit more aggressive. I'm going to turn my RGB down at the same time. So even though my color intensity is going to be going up, I want to turn my RGB down, at least for me personally, for right now. Again, I'm kind of faking a lot of this subdermal stuff right now. And we'll go over the purple again with more whites. We'll use more reds, things like that. This membrane, I'll probably touch on that last. You know, that's just going to be kind of veiny stuff. I'm more kind of interested in the skin right now and how we're going to sell that a little bit. You know, the thing too with polypaint is that, you know, me personally, I don't know who. Actually, I'd be curious to know if a film ever used a polypaint as, like, you know, their final kind of color pass. I've never done it, but to me, polypainting is a means to an end for a design. You know, it's like, you know, I'm trying to figure out a design on something, and it's a quick way to do it. But in the real world, whatever that means, you probably need high-res photos of things like skin and scales and bumps and, you know, all that little stuff. But I would be interested to know if anyone's ever used polypaint exclusively for like a final film texture or something. That'd be pretty interesting, actually. I tend to do a lot of things by hand. You know, I could kind of just do an alpha select on a lot of this and achieve maybe what I'm doing a bit faster, but I find that by doing stuff by hand I get kind of a level of unpredictability in what I'm doing, and I like getting accidents. I like happy accidents. I've talked about that in a lot of other videos I've done. I like a lot, oops, that's a little way too aggressive. I like getting happy accidents where I go, oh, I didn't really mean necessarily put a stroke there, but now that it's there, I like it, and then I stick with it. I think those things are really good. So right away we're getting kind of an interesting look. Let's go back towards reds. Definitely want the tips of the ears to be red. Gonna really accent that actually. Keep in mind the distance that you paint at as well. I work with a lot of artists and I have a lot of artist friends, and even myself, I always have to kind of gauge myself and paint at a distance that is relative to how I'm going to be viewing this thing. If you're going to view something from here, then yeah, okay, you want to paint, from this distance. But how often is that the case, Usually it's from here. And so it's good to back up every now and then and kind of do this and paint these strokes from that actual distance, because obviously it makes sense. And like right now I'm getting a lot of really good big heavy coverage. Because I'm not zoomed in like a crazy person painting every single pixel. And I don't go crazy with my brushes. I'm still using the same brushes I was using when we started. Same one brush. I'll probably never change it actually until maybe towards the end or something. Maybe I'll just do like a small detail brush, but I'm pretty much stuck with what I got for now, and I'm okay with it. Now I want to go in and add a little more aggressive yellows for the skin. That's kind of for me anyway, a tough color to kind of achieve, because I don't want them to be yellow like a lemon. That's not too bad, maybe. Yeah, I don't really like that so much. Let me undo a little bit. I actually almost never undo. I'll go through entire projects and undo like once. And before we get too far, let's save this guy. Earballs 3. Sure, why not? Let's replace it. Let's see. Sometimes I'll just do things like this where I go huge coverage, generic huge coverage, and I go back it up and I go, okay, I'm not in love with that color. Let's try this. Not enough reds. And that to me is kind of an okay color. Let me just play around with the red in it a little bit. So all I'm doing right now is laying down a base and then undoing and then laying a base and undoing, because I'm just practicing to see what I like. Okay, that I actually like. Okay, so I kind of feel like I like that color a bit. And I've laid down this kind of track of, okay, here's where some of the blood flow is going to be. Now I'll do another layer where I'm kind of adding more kind of a top layer of skin on top of the reds. And I'm kind of going to repeat this process over and over again. I will go back over this with more reds. I'll go back over with more purples. It's good to change the scale of your brush from time to time, because yeah, you get these nice big spots. You know, those are nice. And you know, you can put the big spots in areas where you want, you know, less kind of detail, where like the back might be much heavier in spots than the front. The front you kind of want a little more detail and stuff, so you won't go quite as aggressive with that stuff. I'm going to turn off my symmetry just for a second on top of the head. Alright, let's go back to the reds and purples. We'll dabble around there a little bit. And a lot of people, you know, if you just hover over a colored area and then press C, you'll sample that area. I actually used ZBrush for a long time before I was aware of that. One of my coworkers told me about it. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I was really annoyed that I didn't know that. Because for so long I was just trying to match colors, which is an interesting exercise in artistry, but incredibly dumb to do. I went a little too purple there. Let's go back towards the reds. I'm going to get a little more aggressive with my reds here. I'm going to re-hit the corner of the mouth, re-hit the lips a little bit. May as well hit the gums while I'm at it. Really quick, same color, whatever. I can just add to it later, it doesn't matter. Inside of the mouth, we'll just do a much darker version. I'm just laying down a base color, so it doesn't matter. almost going to go white. For a minute so I can kind of do a little bit of highlight work. Maybe hit this top of his head a bit. Sorry, not much to say right now, just kind of experimenting a bit with the colors still. You know, and I'm still kind of defining the subdermal, to be honest. I don't actually know what his final overall color will be, you know, and when I say that I mean, like, you know, what color is he going to be when you kind of back up and look at him at a distance. Like, I don't really know necessarily. I still like the idea of him being yellowish for some reason. I don't know why. I'm doing the same thing again now. I'm kind of doing big color value changes. To see how I feel about it. And that's not a bad color. So let me try and change my flow a bit. So by changing my flow, I'm going to be able to kind of cover large areas and hopefully make them that's okay, and make him a little bit more well, I'm trying to lay down a color on top of everything I've painted, and if your stroke is too aggressive, you're just going to keep covering up what you've painted, obviously. So I'm trying to do this. I'm going to turn off my symmetry so I can do the center of the head. You see how it's actually working? Oops, let me turn my symmetry back on. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. There we go. You can get really cheap and generic and just kind of start doing swirls. I'm doing really light swirls over this whole thing right now. And getting an okay result. I don't know if this is artistic painting at this point, but let me just test a couple things out. Like, what if I make his chest a different color? trying to cover the center line without using my symmetry for a minute, because symmetry looks horrible at the middle if you paint that way. What to do? What to do? I'm going to go real dark inside the nose for a second. So another trick that I like to do, which works pretty well for me, is, you know, once I get kind of a base coat, maybe I want to start accenting some edges and doing some other things. And I can kind of hand paint all that, but I can also just go down to my masking, and I can say mask by cavity. That's going to give me a really, really aggressive mask on everything that is indented into my sculpt, and I want to inverse that because I want to actually paint inside of those indents, which is going to give me this. And now I will just say turn off view mask. So the mask is still there, I'm just not viewing it at this time. I'm just going to kind of use that as a way to quickly paint maybe some of these edges and stuff. You can kind of get a big brush and start getting I'll just show you really quick. You know, I can kind of do this kind of a thing. And that gives us a pretty interesting look, actually. That I don't mind. Let's kind of explore that a little bit. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing with this guy. And you can see how it's letting the veins kind of peek through, which is what I wanted anyway. So now we're getting an interesting kind of guy here. And of course, everything I just did, I didn't have symmetry on, so let me undo just a little bit. So now right away we have quite a lot of detail kind of added into this character right away. We didn't actually do that much work to get there. We added our base coat, we went in, we did some masking. Let me go to, let's save this really quick since we have a result I'm happy with, at least for that kind of quick little trick we did. I'm going to go towards purples again, but real dark ones. I feel like I want his eyes to be darker. I'm going to blur my mask. Let's not forget my mask is still on there. let's say view mask. I'm going to blur that really quick, which is going to give me a much softer result. I'm going to turn that off. But that's going to allow me to paint in more areas as well. Actually, now I feel like his eyes are getting way too dark. What did you do? No! Let's inverse this and turn that off again. Don't forget, we're experimenting a lot. I don't have a design in front of me. I don't necessarily know what I want. His eyes kind of got a little bit dark on me. I'm not too excited about that. I think they got a little too dark. But maybe we can explore that and make maybe the front of his head a little bit dark. Let's see what that looks like. Not so much. What about this? Not so much. Since I don't like it, let me just lighten it a bit. And then let's go back to some reds. And now is probably a good time to kind of really get in here. Really what I should be doing is stepping up my subdivision one more level. I have plenty of, this is only like 2 million polys. I've got plenty of space to do it if I wanted to step up. But I kind of do that at last minute. I don't step up. Just slows down my poly painting and I don't necessarily need it right away. Let's go back to our purples. So this isn't too bad, and let me look at my mask again, see what's going on. View mask, inverse. Inverse again, view mask off. You know, at any point, of course, I can turn off my alphas and start putting some solid kind of colors in. Not everything in the world is spotted, after all. Maybe I just want to imply some what the hell am I trying to say? Lip cracks or something? I don't know. I can't talk, I don't know what I'm saying. I like to go in at some point too and like really, you know, push a couple colors quite a lot. So I'll go in with like, you know, pretty aggressive reds and really do like this kind of a deal. Okay, maybe not that red, that was a little bit idiotic. Retard! Okay, let's do another one. That's a little better. A little better, not a lot though. Let's turn off my eye subtools. Again, I could be stepping up right now, just for no particular reason. I'm not, don't really need to that bad. You can always go in after the fact and paint veins, of course. Let's maybe go over here, lay down some purples. I'm going to turn off my mask. I've had my mask on for quite a long time. I think we can get rid of that for now. Actually, maybe not. Maybe I should do this. So I can kind of lay some color down on my veins a little easier. Get some purples going. I want to make sure they stand out. Maybe I should go a little bit lighter. Maybe not that light. Maybe we should shift this a little towards blue, actually. Blue greens. Let's try some blue greens. Maybe some darker blues. Let's do something like this. Ah, that's not too bad. I'm kind of digging that. Kind of digging that, my man. Earballs, getting some veins. Oh, too much. Slow down. Slow your roll. Excellent. Excellent. Get some blues up in here. Man, this guy's a little bit spotty, but I think you get the idea. I hope you get the idea. I have no idea what I'm doing, actually. What am I doing right now? I don't even know. I'm just making little squigglies. Squigglies! There we go. A couple of these guys. If you want, you can fake some veins in the character himself. You can kind of do this kind of a deal where you put some really subtle blues and stuff under the skin, which I think we can do. Maybe not like this, you know, like freak everybody out. You can, but if you do that, you should support something so aggressive. I feel like you should support that with some geo. So right now, I'm just kind of making blue lines in the face. Let me turn off my mask. That would give us a little bit more. Especially like in the forehead and stuff. And turn off your symmetry for the love of God. People always do that. Drives me bananas. You know, like the exact same vein on like both eyes. It's like, okay, calm down everybody. Bit of this, a bit of this, and I'm kind of only doing the blue pass right now. You know what I mean? Like I'm hooking them up with some blue veins, hooking them up in the neck area. I don't like the membrane as it stands right now, to be honest. Sometimes I'll literally do this and be like, what would it look like if they were blue? You know, like, sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not, but you never know. Let's go back to what we were doing before. Let's go back to mask by cavity. Just want to experiment with some different colors. See, I don't like that. I don't like that I'm getting this. I don't like it. I definitely don't like that. Let's do this. Whoosh. Maybe just like a subtle blue. No! Okay, well, I'll come up with something on my own for that. There's no point in you guys watching me struggle like a retard. Struggle like an idiot through that, that ordeal. Considering I have no idea what I want. Alright, let's go back to here. Let's do a little bit of this. I'm kind of digging this blue theme we got going on right now. And I want to outline this ear a bit in said blue theme. And let's invert our mask, turn it off. See, now I got too much blue. Let's back them off a bit. Too much. There we go. I think that's okay for right now for a basic demo. I mean, I'm kind of at a point where I'm just gonna noodle the hell out of this thing, you know, and start adding some solid colors on top of this probably. But I kind of feel like, you know, I'm not showing anything new at this point. I probably want to punch a couple colors maybe. You know, like, I'll hit some areas with a little extra sauce. Come on, ZBrush. Focus. There we go. Let's hook his tongue up really quick. Give him some purple. No! I'm going to go in here with a solid black just to kind of mask everything back here. Just to make it look like it's actually closed up. Or disappearing off into space, I guess. There you go. Kind of a quick skin build-up little tutorial thingy. Hope this is helpful. I'll probably progress on my own a little bit and maybe post this on my blog or something. But in the meantime, there you go. A little video just for the kids. Thanks for watching, everybody. Follow my blog, www.downinfront-josh.blogspot.com. Thanks, everybody.